Fame can be a double-edged sword. It brings recognition, but also isolates. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be so famous that the world sees only your achievements, but not you? The person behind it all. This is the untold story of Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, and the day he chose to vanish into the crowd, just to see how the world would treat him when no one knew who he was. Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and some of the world's most groundbreaking innovations, was no stranger to the spotlight. In fact, he had spent years under its unforgiving glare. His achievements had placed him on the pedestal of global recognition, but along with this came a heavy burden. Fame, for all its glamour, had deprived Elon of one essential human experience: the ability to be ordinary. No matter where he went, who he met, or even what he said, there was always a lingering doubt. Were people seeing him for who he really was? Or were they simply seeing the billionaire, the visionary, the titan of industry? It became exhausting to be constantly judged by his wealth, power, and influence. To Elon, it felt like the world saw him less as a man and more as a larger-than-life figure, an idea, a concept, rather than a person. The weight of his identity as Elon Musk grew heavier with each passing day. One night, alone in his sprawling mansion, a thought struck him. What if he could escape it all, just for a little while? What if he could shed the layers of fame and fortune that had come to define him and walk among people as just another face in the crowd? No corporate responsibilities, no meetings with world leaders, no interviews with journalists wanting sound bites about the future of space travel or AI, just anonymity. That's when he devised a bold plan, an extraordinary social experiment that only someone like Elon could dream up. He would strip away the wealth, the power, the fame. For 1 month, he would live as an ordinary man, disappearing into the everyday world with nothing more than the clothes on his back. No designer suits, no high-tech gadgets, no personal assistants. He would don simple jeans, a baseball cap, and sunglasses, the kind of clothes that would help him blend into the background. The goal was simple: to see how the world treated him when he was no longer Elon Musk, but just another nameless figure in the sea of humanity. The next morning, before dawn, he began to set his plan into motion. His private jet took him to a small town, far away from the glitz and glamour of Silicon Valley. With only a few $100s in his pocket, he rented a modest apartment and began living as John, a man with no past, no fame, no fortune. For the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't Elon Musk anymore. At first, it felt liberating. There were no paparazzi following him, no social media buzz about his every move. He could walk into a coffee shop and sit down without a single person looking twice. He was invisible, and that gave him a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. But as the days went on, the experiment took an unexpected turn. Without the recognition and status, Elon discovered how differently people treated him. In meetings with potential employers, he was just another face in a sea of resumes. At restaurants, service was polite but indifferent. Strangers were friendly, but they didn't linger to ask about his opinions or vision for the future. It was a stark contrast to the world he had known for so long. A world where his words carried weight, where his presence commanded attention. And yet, amid the ordinariness, Elon found something precious: genuine connections. He made friends with neighbors who had no idea of his true identity. They spoke to him about their lives, their struggles, their dreams, not because they wanted something from him, but because they saw him as an equal. He worked odd jobs, learning about the day-to-day lives of those who kept the world turning without headlines or fame. He experienced the world through their eyes, seeing the challenges and triumphs of regular people. But as the month wore on, a deeper realization began to set in. While the anonymity gave him a sense of freedom, it also stripped away the sense of purpose he had found through his work. Without the ability to influence, to innovate, and to push the boundaries of what was possible, Elon felt adrift. His experiment had taught him what it was like to live as an ordinary person, but it also made him appreciate the unique role he played in the world. In the end, Elon returned to his life, but he did so with a new perspective. He had walked among the people, seen life from their side, and learned that while fame and fortune had their burdens, they also gave him the power to make a difference. He could never be just another face in the crowd, and maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Behind the counter stood two baristas, each a striking contrast to the other. Mark, a young man with an infectious smile and an open, friendly demeanor, immediately greeted Elon with a warmth that made the cafe feel even more inviting. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" Mark asked cheerfully, his bright energy cutting through the quiet hum of the cafe. Elon opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a quiet yet unmistakable voice cut through the air. "You've got to be kidding me." The voice belonged to Lily, the other barista standing beside Mark. She was young too, with sharp eyes and a face that seemed permanently fixed in an expression of mild disdain. Her eyes had rolled almost the moment she saw Elon step up to the counter, her arms crossed, radiating annoyance. She didn't even try to hide her disinterest, muttering just loud enough for Elon to hear. The rudeness was palpable, and yet Elon didn't flinch. He had anticipated this. Part of his experiment was to see exactly these kinds of interactions. In a world where he wasn't Elon Musk billionaire, how would people treat him? Not everyone was going to be courteous or eager to please, and that was the point. He wasn't here for special treatment. He was here to witness how the world really worked when no one knew who he was. "A cappuccino, please," Elon said calmly, his tone neutral, brushing off Lily's attitude with ease. Mark, ever the professional, smiled even wider. "Coming right up," he said, immediately turning to prepare the order. He moved quickly and efficiently, the sound of the espresso machine filling the air as he frothed milk and pulled the shots with care. His enthusiasm never wavered, as if making each coffee was an opportunity to brighten someone's day. Lily, on the other hand, sighed dramatically, the kind of exaggerated exhale that was meant to make sure everyone around her knew just how inconvenienced she felt. She muttered to herself, but loud enough that it was clear she had no problem showing her disdain. Elon was just another customer to her, someone she deemed unimportant, not worth her time or effort. Her annoyance was written all over her face as she tapped her foot impatiently, casting irritated glances at Mark, as if to silently question why he was bothering to be so cheerful with this stranger. As Elon waited, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the two. Mark embodied warmth and professionalism, treating each customer with kindness, whether they were a regular or someone passing through. To Mark, it didn't matter who you were. You deserved respect simply because you were there, seeking a cup of coffee. Lily, on the other hand, couldn't have been more different. Her posture, her expressions, her every movement screamed indifference, or worse, contempt. To her, Elon wasn't worth the effort. He wasn't a high-profile customer or someone she needed to impress. In her eyes, he was just another face in a sea of faces, another person asking for something without giving anything in return. She treated him with the kind of cold detachment that people often reserve for those they consider beneath their attention. Elon, standing quietly at the counter, took it all in. He was accustomed to commanding rooms full of people, to being the center of attention wherever he went. But in this cafe, he was invisible, just a nameless man ordering a cappuccino. And for the first time in a long time, He wasn't being treated based on his status or wealth, but based on how these two individuals perceived him in this very moment. Mark's kindness reminded him that there were still people who treated others with decency, regardless of their background or importance. He was professional, dedicated to his craft, and genuinely seemed to enjoy interacting with customers. Lily, on the other hand, was a reminder of the opposite, of the casual cruelty and indifference that often existed in places where people felt anonymous or disconnected. Her irritation wasn't personal, but it was a reflection of the way she saw the world and how she believed certain people deserved less of her time or energy. As Elon stood there, quietly observing the two baristas, he realized that this small encounter was exactly what he had been searching for. It was a glimpse into the everyday interactions that most people faced, sometimes greeted with warmth, sometimes met with hostility or indifference. Without his fame, without the name Elon Musk attached to him, he was treated like anyone else, and that in itself was an eye-opening experience. Mark handed Elon the cappuccino, his smile as bright as ever. "Here you go, enjoy." Elon took the cup, feeling the warmth of the coffee in his hands. "Thank you," he said, offering Mark a small, genuine smile in return. He glanced at Lily, who still couldn't be bothered to acknowledge him. As he turned to find a seat, Elon realized something profound. This was the real world, a world where respect and kindness were not guaranteed, where people formed their judgments based on fleeting impressions, and where your treatment often depended on the mood or attitude of whoever stood across from you. And though it was jarring, it was also strangely refreshing. For the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't being treated as a billionaire or a visionary. He was just a man ordering a coffee. And that was exactly what he had wanted. Elon sat quietly in the corner of the café, his cappuccino in hand, observing the ebb and flow of the small world around him. From his seat, he had a perfect view of the counter, where the two baristas, Mark and Lily, worked side by side, yet in completely different worlds. Mark moved with a lightness, greeting each customer with a warm smile, a kind word, and a genuine interest in their day. He laughed easily with the regulars, offered thoughtful suggestions to newcomers, and seemed to take pride in every cup he made. Elon found himself admiring Mark's approach. It wasn't just about making coffee, it was about connection. Mark was the kind of person who made you feel seen, as though your presence mattered, even if you were just passing through for a quick drink. In his simple acts of kindness, there was something profoundly human. Elon had always valued efficiency and innovation, but watching Mark, he realized how important these small, everyday interactions could be. They were the threads that wove people together, creating a sense of community and belonging, even in the most ordinary of places. But beside Mark was Lily, and her demeanor couldn't have been more different. She moved with impatience, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting to the clock as if willing the minutes to go faster. Every customer she served was met with the same cold indifference. Her words were clipped, her tone sharp, and it was clear she couldn't wait for her shift to end. Each interaction seemed to be a chore for her, something to be got through, rather than a chance to engage. Elon's eyes followed her as she served a middle-aged woman who approached the counter, clearly unsure of what to order. The woman hesitated, glancing up at the chalkboard menu, and asked softly, "Could you tell me more about the lattes? What flavors do you have?" Lily barely looked at her. With a sigh of exasperation, she replied in a sharp, dismissive tone, "It's all there on the menu. Just read it." The woman flinched slightly at the cold response, her face flushing with discomfort. She glanced down at the menu again, now more hesitant, unsure of what to say next. The warmth and curiosity she had approached the counter with quickly drained away, replaced by an awkward silence as she tried to decide on her order. From his seat, Elon felt a pang of disappointment. It wasn't just that Lily was rude. There was something deeper about the moment that struck him. He had seen his dynamic before, in different forms, in boardrooms, in meetings, even in the way the public often reacted to him. People like Lily, quick to judge, quick to dismiss, treated others as if they were obstacles rather than fellow humans. She saw customers as interruptions to her day, each one a burden she had to tolerate rather than an opportunity for connection. Elon's thoughts drifted as he continued to watch. People like Mark were rare gems in a world that often judged too quickly and too harshly. In his corner of the café, Mark had created a small oasis of kindness, a place where people felt welcomed and valued, even if just for a moment. But people like Lily, well, they reminded Elon of the harshness of the world outside this café, the quick judgments, the impatience, the coldness that so many people faced in their daily lives simply because they were seen as insignificant or in the way. Elon took a sip of his cappuccino, savoring the rich, bitter taste, but his mind was elsewhere. He had come here to experience the world as it was, unfiltered by his fame or status, and this café had become a microcosm of something larger. He realized that so much of life was shaped by these small, seemingly insignificant interactions. For someone like him, who lived at the top of a global empire, it was easy to forget how powerful a single moment of kindness or cruelty could be. As Elon watched the woman finally place her order with a defeated nod, he couldn't shake the thought that people like her encountered Lily's every day, rushed, dismissed, made to feel small and insignificant, and yet, for every Lily, there was a Mark, someone who chose to see the best in others, who understood the value of treating people with dignity regardless of their circumstances. The contrast between the two baristas lingered in Elon's mind. In his world of technological marvels and groundbreaking innovation, it was easy to focus on the grand ideas, the future of humanity, and the big picture. But sitting in that small cafe, he was reminded that the human experience was often shaped by the smallest gestures. An unexpected smile, a kind word, a moment of empathy. Elon's gaze returned to Mark, who was now handing a perfectly crafted latte to the woman with a cheerful, "Enjoy your day." The woman smiled weakly in return, clearly grateful for Mark's warmth, even after Lily's icy reception. Elon leaned back in his chair, his thoughts swirling. He had come to this cafe to disappear, to blend into the background and see the world as it was. And what he saw was the simple truth. Kindness mattered. It wasn't about wealth or fame or power. It was about the little moments, the human connections that shaped the way people moved through their lives. In that corner of the roasted bean, watching two baristas at work, Elon realized that sometimes the greatest wisdom wasn't found in the stars or the future of technology. It was right here, in the everyday acts of compassion and respect that held the world together. As Elon finished the last sip of his cappuccino, he felt a sense of clarity. This experiment had been about shedding his fame and fortune, seeing the world through an ordinary lens, and in this small cafe he had found something unexpectedly valuable. An example of the power of kindness in Mark, and a reflection of the cold indifference that too often tainted everyday life in Lily. It was time to act on what he had observed. Standing up, Elon made his way back to the counter. Mark was busy wiping down the machines, his usual upbeat energy still present despite the grind of his shift. Lily, as usual, was glued to her phone, scrolling absent-mindedly, her face set in a bored expression. "Marekt," Elon said softly, just loud enough to catch the young barista's attention. Mark looked up surprised. His bright eyes met Elon's and he straightened up, slightly caught off guard by the approach. "You're a good man, a kind man," Elon continued, his voice sincere and calm. Mark's eyes widened in surprise, his cheeks flushing slightly at the unexpected compliment. He wasn't used to hearing things like this, especially not from a random customer. People usually took their coffee and left without a second thought. "Thank you, sir," Mark replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. He wasn't sure what to make of this interaction, but there was something in Elon's tone that felt genuine. With a warm smile, Elon reached into his pocket and handed Mark a card. The barista took it, his brow furrowing as he looked down at the name printed boldly across the front. Elon Musk. Mark's hands trembled slightly, and his eyes went wide with disbelief as he looked from the card to the man standing before him. "Wait, Elon Musk?" Mark stammered, his voice barely more than a whisper, as if speaking the name too loudly would make the moment vanish. Elon nodded, his smile growing, just a little. "Yes, that's me." Mark stood frozen, still processing the realization that he had spent the morning serving coffee to one of the most famous men in the world. The man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and so many other revolutionary ventures had been sitting in the corner, drinking a cappuccino like any other customer. It didn't make sense. Why would someone like Elon Musk be here? Why would he take the time to compliment a simple barista? Elon continued, his voice soft but full of conviction. "I've been watching you today, Mark, and your kindness is rare. The way you treat people, it's not something you see every day. You deserve more than just this job." Mark's breath caught in his throat, his mind racing to catch up. He looked at the card again, and there, printed just below the name, was a phone number. "Call this number tomorrow," Ellen added. "I'd like to talk to you about some opportunities." The gravity of the moment finally hit Mark, and he stammered, I don't know what to say. Thank you, Mr. Musk. This is unreal." Lily, who had been engrossed in her phone, suddenly looked up. Her expression shifted from disinterest to disbelief as she caught the tail end of the conversation. Her eyes darted between Mark and Elon, her mouth slightly agape. "What? Why would he want to help you?" Lily blurted out, her voice dripping with scorn. "You're just a barista." Her words hung in the air, sharp and dismissive, echoing the attitude she had shown all morning. It was clear she couldn't fathom why someone like Elon Musk would single out someone like Mark, a lowly barista in her eyes, as worthy of his attention. Elon turned to face Lily, his gaze steady, no longer the quiet observer but the man who commanded respect with his mere presence. His expression remained calm, but there was a firmness in his eyes as he spoke. "Kindness and respect are far more valuable than you think," Elon said, his voice measured but resolute. "Mark showed that today, and that's why I want to help him." Lily blinked, stunned into silence. She had been so quick to dismiss Mark, to treat him as if his role at the café defined his worth. And now, the richest man in the world was standing here, telling her that it wasn't about titles or status, but about how you treated others. Elon's gaze softened, but his words carried a weight that left no room for doubt. "Maybe you should try it sometime." Lily looked away, her face flushing with a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. She hadn't expected to be called out like this, and certainly not by someone like Elon Musk. For the first time that day, she was silent. Mark, still in shock, clutched the card in his hand like a lifeline, his mind swirling with possibilities. He had never imagined that his simple kindness could lead to something like this. "Thank you," he said again, his voice soft but filled with gratitude. "I'll call tomorrow." Elon gave him a nod and a smile, then turned and walked out of the cafe, the door chiming softly as he left. As he stepped back onto the street, the cool air hitting his face, Elon felt lighter. The experiment had shown him something far more valuable than he had anticipated. The world, for all its complexities and challenges, still had room for simple human kindness. And sometimes, that was enough to change someone's life. For Mark, today had started like any other, a routine shift at a small cafe. But by the time he finished his shift, everything had changed. And, as for Lily, she had been given something to think about. Whether she would take it to heart was up to her. But Elon walked away knowing one thing for certain: true value wasn't in wealth or fame. It was in how you treated the people around you, no matter who they were. Mark's hands trembled as he dialed the number on the card. What followed was beyond anything he had ever imagined: a job interview at Tesla. From the moment he stepped into Tesla's headquarters, Mark knew his life was about to change. He nailed the interview not just with his technical knowledge, but with the same sincerity and kindness that had caught Elon's attention. Mark didn't just get the job, he excelled. Within weeks, he proposed a new solution that reduced Tesla's manufacturing costs without sacrificing quality. Elon, always on the lookout for exceptional talent, took notice. Mark's life had transformed, all because of a moment of kindness. As for Lily, well, let's just say that life didn't reward her bitterness in the same way. Elon Musk's experiment revealed a profound truth: how we treat others, regardless of who they are or what they appear to be, shapes the opportunities we attract. Kindness is a force that can break through barriers, social, financial, and even the invisible walls we build between ourselves. Mark's story is proof of that.